Ulitin natin, okay. Ito yung weird. Around 70% hindi natutuwa sa government management of inflation. Around 70% ay saying na ito yung pinaka-urgent na issue, itong inflation management. Pero yung approval rating ni President BBM at saka ni Vice President Sara Duterte ay around 70% too. So, how does that make sense, right? Kung daming tao ay hindi natutuwa sa management ng isang issue na napakamahalaga sa karamihan ng tao, then bakit ang taas ang approval ratings ng President and Vice President mo? Kaya nga sabi ko, you don't take approval ratings, surveys on face value, right? You can accept that the survey is legit, the methodology is correct, but you still have to interrogate it qualitatively, di ba? So, kaya nga sabi ko, dapat actually mas mahalaga na titignan mo yung approval ng tao on a case-to-case basis when it comes to key policies. That's where makikita mo kung ano talagang sentimento ng tao. But again, we can have a long conversation about this. I'm just saying, sometimes kung na-interrogate mo talaga yung surveys, some of them don't make sense. So, I remember during Digong's time, more than 7 out of 10 Filipinos said they approve the drug war. But more than 8 out of 10 Filipinos said they're worried about EJK. They oppose EJK. Right? So how do you reconcile that? Parang ridiculous yung situation. Diba? So, ulitin natin. Ito yung situation natin. More than 70% identify inflation as the most important issue in the country in terms of urgency. More than 70% are saying hindi sila natutuwa dun sa management of inflation. And then more than 70% or around 70% approve yung performance ng President at Vice President mo. So that has to be interrogated. So you cannot just take them on face value. In the same way na panahon ni Digong, more than 70% approved the drug war, but more than 80% are opposing EJK or were concerned about EJK or were fearful of what it meant. So ano ibig sabihin yan? So in that case, ang explanation ko was, they agree with the drug war in principle, but they want a better method na hindi kasing bara-bara. Siguro they want a drug war minus all these EJKs. So you have to interrogate that. You cannot just take it on face value and say, ito yung approval rating, therefore napakagaling ng presidente. And I always say this, no? Most of the time, the good, competent presidents are actually the ones that are not popular. Because doing the right thing is usually the unpopular thing. Because doing the right thing means sacrifice, meaning maraming kang na babanggayin, meaning may mga gagawin ka na masakit in the short run, but they're good for the country and the people in the long run. It's like diet. So una, hindi ka natutuwa, pero in the long run, it's good for you. Right? So popularity numbers actually do not mean much. What you have to look at is competence in terms of managing yung mga top and most important issues. That's a more reasonable way of approaching these kinds of surveys. Okay? So if you look at it again, so 70% of Filipinos disapprove yung Marcos administration performance on inflation, which I said is concern of 70% of people, right? So actually, net approval rating on controlling inflation is negative 64%. Negative 64% yung approval of handling of inflation issue. And so on and so forth. I mean, on the other issue, they're also not doing very well. Now, having said that, kamusta naman yung kalagayan ng ating ekonomiya? Now, if you look at 2024, it's really a mixed bag. No? And because it's a mixed bag, ang maging laro dito is, hindi naman spinning, but potential lang maging laro dito is, packaging and presentation. So I'll give you an example. So this is a very interesting case. So, nagsi-check lang ako about foreign direct investments. Of course, yung mga ibang kameta natin, familiar kayo dito, marami tayong mga vlogs about industrial policy, trade policy, nakausap natin yung mga kaibigan natin, mga ekonomista, historiador, mga experts. I talked about my take on industrial and trade policies, etc. So we had a lot of economics-related vlogs dito in the past. And in fact, one of our best podcasts, actually, 3 out of our top 20 podcasts had to do with industrial policy, trade policy, etc. And the responses were very good. A number of ambassadors, etc. nakinig sila. So, thank you so much for the support, mga kameta. Now, going back to this, these are the things that I find very interesting in the Philippines. So, I was just looking about, okay, anong kalagayan ng foreign direct investment? Kasi yung ating minamahal na Pangulo, ang dami niyang travels. By the way, mag-travel ulit siya next week, pupunta naman Vietnam, di ba? So, kamusta naman? Ito na, almost 2 years na siya in power, di ba? Lampas na sa isang taon since yung mga first major travels niya, 'di ba? September pa lang ng 2022, nag-New York na siya, and then nag-Europe na siya nung October, nag-Brussels, ganun. So, kamusta naman ang foreign direct investment? So, I was just curious, and then I went and said, okay, let's check. kamusta ang latest FDI? And this is the interesting thing that we see. So, look at how, let's be nice, or maybe not, medyo deceptive tignan mo. So, if you look at the title of this news report, it says, Philippines surpasses Malaysia, Thailand in net foreign direct investments. Like, wow, impressive. Tinalo natin Thailand. Ang Thailand po ang Detroit of Southeast of Asia. Karamihan ng mga ginagamit natin mga kotse, lalo yung mga Toyota, ay ginagawa hindi sa Japan, hindi sa China, ginagawa dyan sa Thailand. So Thailand produces more than 1 million cars a year. Close to 2 million, I think, some point. Now, humahabol lang Indonesia and Vietnam. Of course, Vietnam may sariling brand sila. And then Malaysia naman, Malaysia is known as the Silicon Valley of Asia. Not only it's a relatively wealthy country, they're almost a high-income country. So, in 2 to 3 years, Malaysia will be classified as a high-income country. Finally, ma-achieve nila yung dapat na-achieve nila na matagal. And, Malaysia has the proton cars, their own industrial base, etc. So, aminin natin, medyo malayo sila sa atin pagdating sa some of the fundamentals of economics, no, industrial manufacturing capacity, per capita income. I think Thailand's per capita income is around $7,000 to $8,000. Philippines is just around $4,000. So twice na mas mayaman ng isang average Thai compared to an average Filipino. So we're roughly 10 years behind them in terms of per capita income. And then Malaysia is, I think, almost $11,000. So almost 3 times more yung per capita income nila. And we're not even looking at the quality of their economic growth. We're not even looking at income inequality. Now, of course, developing country din silang pareho. Wala sa kanyang dalawa yung OECD. But still, malayong-malayo sila sa atin on many fronts. So, impressive. Titignan mo itong title na to, sinasabi, Philippines surpasses Malaysia and Thailand in net foreign direct investments. And then, like, okay, basahin natin. Anong meron? So, ito. Ito talaga. Yan ang sinasabi kong problema natin, mga kameta talaga. Ay. Okay, papakita ko lang dito sa mga kaibigan natin dito sa kabila na hindi nila nakita. Don't worry guys, i-upload ko rin ito separately para makita nila naman with the PowerPoint, etc. Mga lobat na ito. Ito yung ibang version niya. Patience lang. Ito, okay. So, this is the other version. Ito yung billionaire version. Kaya, kita nyo. Tingnan, nakalagay dito. Philippines surpasses Malaysia, Thailand, net foreign. And then, nung binasa mo, so, Philippines, nilampasan natin sa net foreign investment ang Malaysia and Thailand in the first 3 quarters 2023 ayon sa Department of Trade and Industry Undersecretary. Okay, whatever. And then, pag tinignan mo yan, actually, tinalo lang natin sila in terms of mas marami ang nawalang investment sa kanila kaysa sa atin. So parang it's a war in terms of negative. So kung negative, ito So Vietnam actually posted a 2% growth in their net FDI. Tapos sinabi pa dito, minimal. Okay, ang yabang natin, minimal lang natin yung positive 2.2% ng Vietnam. Pero purong negative sa ibang bansa. So actually, in the case of the Philippines, 15.9, 16% ang bumaba. 16% ang reduction ng net FDI inflow. So yung pumasok at lumabas, negative pa ang total. So mas maraming lumabas kaysa pumasok sa FDI last year sa Pilipinas, sa first 3 quarters. Now, proud na proud tayo na 16% negative lang to dahil it's 18% in Indonesia, 50% in Thailand, and 60% in Malaysia. Right? So this is interesting. So for the first 3 quarters of 2020, the Philippines net inflows amounted to 5.8 billion pesos, higher than Malaysia's 4.9 and Thailand's 4.4. Okay. Now, the good news is that kind of makes us number 3 in the region because we're just next after Singapore as usual. But alam niyo naman sa Singapore, actually yung pumapasok sa Singapore, usually na-distribute yan across the region. So, given namang number 1 ng Singapore. Yung Vietnam, kasi nag-post pa sila ng positive. Yung Philippines, number 3 tayo. Pero, parang it's like having one eye in a valley of blind people. Parang ganun So this is my problem. When you look at it, ang Pilipinas, napakababa already yung FDI stock natin. Yung foreign direct investment stock natin ay napakaliit kumpara dun sa mga kapitbahay natin. So kahit sila, mawalan sila ng, I don't know, 10 billion last year, wala yan in the greater scheme of things. Dahil yung FDI stock nila ay $500 billion. Right? Pero Pilipinas, sabi natin, 50-60 billion lang yung total FDI stock natin. Kung nawalan tayo ng 10 billion, ang laki mawawala sa atin. 15 to 20% ang mawawala sa atin. So this is what I'm saying. In fact, yun ang tinatawag na advantage of disadvantage or something like that, or advantage of laggards, or so panahon ng Asian financial crisis, for instance, Philippines actually suffered very low reductions in its GDP compared dun sa mga kapitbahay natin na I think 20% in Indonesia. But that was because the Philippines was less integrated and less developed than its counterparts. So, of course, madali mo sabihin na ang galing naman ng Pilipinas, nilampasan natin yung mga kapitbahay natin. Pero nilampasan natin sila kasi hindi naman tayo talaga masyadong, we were not even there in the conversation to begin with, right? It's like, medyo kulelat ka nga sa klase, and then bumaba yung grado mo, pero mas bumaba yung grado nila. Pero overall, mas mataas pa rin sila sa'yo, di ba? So kung ikaw ay medyo laggard historically, you cannot afford to get into a race to the bottom race, right? You have to be in a positive territory. At the very least, you have to be like Vietnam, because Vietnam is catching up. Alam niyo naman, Vietnam, napakahirap na bansa, war-stricken, dami nilang crisis, problems. So ngayon, medyo humahabol na sila. So, Vietnam, which has almost exactly the same level of per capita income as Indonesia and slightly higher than Philippines, just over $4,000. I think $4,300. Well, I mean, they're getting there in that right direction. So, yun lang sa akin. So, my concern, my worry sometimes is, ang mangyayari na lang sa atin is magsispin-spin na lang tayo. Na, okay lang naman na wala naman tayong FDI. Mas nawalan yung ng FDI yung kapitbahay natin. Yung parang, pero yung mga kapitbahay natin ay 2 times, 3 times more developed than us, at least in terms of per capita income, right? So, we cannot afford to have this race to the bottom kind of situation with them. Now, the slightly better news is the Philippines is expected to have a decent growth next year, right? But mukhang malabo na we can sustain that 6-7% growth that we have been used to in the past almost decade, since 2012 onwards, right? So siguro ang growth natin is 5.8% for this year, better than last year na 5.4% lang. Pero still, Philippines, we should be growing 8 to 10% at least. So that's my worry na medyo yung trend lines ng economy natin is, okay, inflation is coming down, which is great, pero growth is also not close to where it should be. We should grow 8 to 10% at least dahil ang baba pa rin ng per capita income natin. So maraming nagsabi na ang Pilipinas ang mayaman, ang problema lang distribution. But actually, Philippines, even if na-distribute mo completely equally yung economic wealth sa bansa natin, still we're considered a poor country. Because yung value ng ating exports ay napakababa kumpara sa ibang bansa. Kahit tayo isang, kilo ng, I don't know, kahit tayo sako-sako ng mga raw materials ng export natin, yung kabilang bansa, ang export lang nila maliit na cellphone, magkasing level lang yung kanilang halaga, di ba? So we still have to really significantly develop our economy. And my worry is that sometimes hanggang mga spin-spin na lang gagawin natin. So I think it's very important when we compare ourselves to our neighbors, we have to compare ourselves to poorer ASEAN countries that are growing very fast. So I think really Vietnam and Indonesia are a better comparison for us. And both of them, on almost every front, are doing better than the Philippines. So the challenge here for President Marcos Jr. is, I don't know, bahala na yung Marlica Fund. Tingnan natin ang mangyari dyan sa Marlica Fund. But I think the challenge here is to come out really with isang totoong strategy kung saan ma-convince talaga itong mga foreign investors na mapunta talaga sa bansa natin and to take a bet on our country. And that's where corruption is important. We have to deal with it. That's where infrastructure development is important. That's where regulatory efficiency and all of those things, red tape reduction is important. But that's where also it's important na may tiwala ang mga investors sa kakayahan ng ating mga top leaders in terms of long-term planning, right? All of those things, right? So ito yung mga tinitignan natin ngayon, mga kameta. Alright? Thank you very much. God bless. And talk to you soon. Sorry, I think I pressed the wrong button dito sa... Wait lang. Hindi pala. Andito pala ako. So, hindi mo na mag-goodbye. Sorry, akala ko na-cut na. Kasi biglang nawala eh. Anyway, I hope ma-appreciate nyo. Sorry, ang daldal natin. Ang dami natin sinabi. But don't worry, mga kameta. Everything I discuss here, dun sa trade policy, industrial policy, Google nyo lang, YouTube nyo lang yan. Meron na tayong mga analysis yan. And you can Google those things on your own. Alright? But we'll have more discussions on that. So yeah, it's a mixed bag, and it's gonna be a spin game in a certain sense. Opposition will say their own thing, the other side will their own thing. But as I said, for me, the most fundamental issue is this weird situation whereby 70% say mahalaga yung inflation, napaka-urgent. 70% say hindi sila natutuwa sa ginagawa ng gobyerno. And then 70% are okay doon sa approval nila ng gobyerno. Like, ano ba nangyari dito, di ba? So, minsan parang ridiculous na rin yung mga yung mga nakikita natin. Not the survey method, but yung kalagayan ng ating political culture, to be honest about it. Okay, on that note, thank you very much mga kameta, ka-TikTokers natin, ka-YouTubers, and kameta natin sa Facebook. I hope you appreciate this long and late. I know medyo late na yung ating intervention. I'll try to come a little bit earlier in succeeding days, but I hope at least na-appreciate na humahabol tayo. Ganun ko kayo kamahal, so hinabol natin kahit medyo late na. On that note, thank you very much. God bless, and talk to you soon. And maraming salamat also again. Sobrang salamat doon sa mga nagpadala ng tulong doon sa ating mga outreach program sa Mindanao, mga others, and i-inform ko po kayo kung meron tayong mga iba, and ipopost ko rin yung pictures ng mga pinadala po natin ng mga outreach program and support, etc. And then yes, and then of course kung may recommendations kayo sa anong mga digital na pwede nating bilhin for like RX100, I don't know, GoPro, mga I think GoPro pwede ko na hiramin yan, meron lang alam. Also magbigay ka ng technical advice. I appreciate that. Alright? Kasi gusto natin medyo upgrade yung mga ibang vlogs natin. Live, we do it as it is, but we want to be upgraded. On that note, thank you very much. God bless, and talk to you soon.